An initialization vector, or IV, is a bit of data added to the beginning of an encryption key. It's also known as a nonce, or a number that's used once. It's just a little bit of extra data to add some randomness to the encryption process. The idea behind the IV is a sound one. However, if you have an IV that's too small or too weak, attackers can take advantage of this and find IVs that are the same for two different keys and then do what's called a collision attack to gain access to encrypted data with the use of a key that's very similar. So they would pass off a similar key or identical key with an identical initialization vector as a key for data that is encrypted that they don't have access to. This was a problem with 802.11 WEP, which was a form of wireless encryption, an early form of wireless encryption that has since been phased out. We're going to go over collision attacks in a separate video, but IV attacks are a form of collision attacks. An evil twin is a very simple attack where an attacker simply makes a new wireless network and they set it up in a physical location very close to the actual wireless network. They name it the same as the real network. So they'll give it the same SSID. And the hope is that users will connect to their evil twin network as opposed to the legitimate network. And then once legitimate users connect to their evil twin network, the attackers are able to intercept data or gain access to the user's device or endpoint. All it is naming a network with the same SSID as a legitimate network and then putting it in a location where wireless users could physically connect to it. A rogue access point is an unauthorized access point in a network that is otherwise very secure. So this could be set up by somebody within a company or organization. It could be set up by a malicious actor. Normally it's just set up by somebody who is going about their day-to-day business. It's a type of insider attack, but it's not a malicious one, though it could have huge ramifications depending on the area you work in. Now think about these wireless attacks and how they can be effective depending on geographic area. If you work in a city with high-rise buildings, a wireless access attack or an evil twin attack, those attacks can be much more effective because the population density is much higher. You have more people in the same area. You have the ability, for people to connect to networks not only within a certain distance from your building, but also a certain distance up and down, different floors, as opposed to, say, a company that's in the suburbs, in a 2-story office building. That type of company would be less susceptible to these types of attacks because, the company, it's just its own. Probably the company has its own building, it's in a corporate park. It's not as likely that you would have these type of networks go undetected. Just something to think about. Anyway, rogue access point just creates an insecure means of accessing a network that is normally a secure network. So wireless communication communicates over radio waves, and jamming is basically amplifying radio waves of a similar frequency to create disruptions in wireless signal strength. So in this type of attack, you're jamming, you're destroying the availability of that wireless network. This can also be fitted with a directional antenna, so attackers can increase the range of the jamming and make the jamming a little more targeted. So a directional antenna can be actually aimed. It's usually a handheld device, and it can be pointed towards the network in question. WPS, or Wi-Fi protected setup, is basically a lazy man's way of accessing a Wi-Fi network. Most people don't like to have to type in a huge password for a Wi-Fi network, so companies came up with this WPS system where you just type in a shorter PIN. The problem is this PIN is susceptible to brute force attacks and other types of attacks where attackers can, for example, just look at the router and find a sticker, like pictured here, with the PIN on it. Or they can just do an easy brute force attack, especially if the pin is like 4 characters long, 4 to 6 characters long. It won't take very long, maybe a couple of hours, for an attacker to gain access to a system that has WPS enabled. And many devices have WPS enabled by default, which makes that a problem.